Okay, good morning. As always, people will kind of trickle in as they tend to do. Please help yourself to breakfast coffee as we make our way through the morning. But I want to introduce Dan Gerry. He is the Executive Director for WAVE, which stands for the World Alliance for Volunteer Economy. And if you were not here for, I think it was 4 RallyABQs ago, there was a big presentation on WAVE, and that information is posted up on the RallyABQ website, so you're welcome to go back and watch that. So WAVE is a nonprofit that's dedicated to launching a mobile platform that encourages and rewards people who are willing to share their talents for the good of others. Now, through this career in organizational development and consulting, Dan has specialized in client-centered, neuroscience-based tools and approaches that help create and sustain highly engaged and productive organizations. His background in behavioral psychology and decades of experience with a variety of public and private sector firms qualify him to design and provide lasting solutions to the increasingly complex challenges facing individuals and organizations today. And I've known Dan for, I don't know, a year and a half maybe, something like that, and found him to be just a wealth of information and just an excellent source for helping create the framework around collaboration that I think has been missing in a lot of the conversations that have happened about how best to partner together. So I asked Dan if he would help create a presentation today to speak specifically to those that were present that want to form collaborations about how to begin doing that. So please welcome Dan, and thank you for being here.
Well, it all started with a dysfunctional family. How many of you grew up in a dysfunctional family?
No.
And that was just a blessing for me. I mean, both my parents were Marines, so I got discipline out of that. And the fact they couldn't communicate was what drove me into behavioral psychology with the question, why can't people just communicate? So wherever I've been in my career, it's always been about why can't we increase communications? A lot of engagement skills training with pharmaceuticals is all about how to connect with employees. So here we are again talking about connecting. And talking about as this world is changing and technology is bringing out a lot of new things and a lot of tough problems to solve, you know, what are the things that work? What are the tool sets? What are the approaches? What are the structures that help enable ongoing, sustained interventions, if you will, change processes in communities that lead to long-term solutions? And it's not easy stuff, as you know. So, the word collaboration right up top. Co-labor, and there's a big emphasis on labor. We should probably highlight that in red, because collaboration takes work. It takes work to start it takes work to maintain it takes work all the way through, because attention's wandered and people tend to drift away. And so it's a tough process to do, but all of us have been engaged in collaborations from the time we were in a family to our friends and where we go to church or not, where we do in sports, is all a collaboration opportunity. And so we probably, what I'd like to do for just a few minutes is to have you, maybe you can join, and let's make these 2 big tables here just for conversation. So would you come on over? Yeah, that'd be great. And maybe you can join here, and then over there we can pull in another chair, just so you have a chance to chat with other people. So, topic for just a quick 5-minute conversation. Oh, I forgot something. Let's do some quick introductions. So let's go around the table and just tell your name and who you're with and something that's inspired you recently. So my example is I have a friend's daughter who is hearing impaired from Taos, staying in my bedroom, studying at UNM for 5 weeks to become a phlebotomist. And she's 40 years old, doesn't know if she can get back to school, has all these problems with confidence. And she just barely passed her first test, and her second test she got a 95. She's studying for about a while. So she inspired me. Okay. You want to start?
Me?
Yeah.
My name's Becky Lowe. I'm with Save My Seat Auction, which is an auction for nonprofit fundraising, silent auction for items and events. Something that's inspired me recently, singing at my church, you know, it lifts people up. I see them get excited. excited and dancing around and I like it.
Okay, next.
Hello, my name is Lou Similori. I'm with CareerLink. The most recent thing that comes to mind is I was working with a young woman yesterday who was, we were sending her out on a job interview, and she was terrified. And I hadn't done this in a long time. That always brings way to talk to somebody about getting a job, and we talked. And in the guise of a practice interview, and we talked, and we worked in and out of that. And I was really inspired by the way she left the conversation. She left feeling not so nervous. Hopefully she's about to get started in an hour, so hopefully that continues.
Real time stuff.
I'm Ann Edenfield Street at Wings for Life International. We work to keep people out of prison. And probably the most exciting thing that's going on for me is, I was just telling Lou, the Mission Family Grant with United Way. We're trying to expand to Valencia County, but I went and met with all the juvenile probation officers because they wanted to collaborate with us. And I said, well, tell me what you would do down there. Listen to this. If we get funding, they would send every youth to our program. Every juvenile that goes into their system, they had 301 last year. And then their kids, so mom, grandma, whatever, has to drive them. Grandma can't leave the little kids at home, and usually if crime starts with the oldest and goes down to all the kids, the whole family would come. And they came up with all of this. I didn't make it up. I wouldn't dare make up what they came up with. They would drop the case would be closed once they came 5 times to our program. And so they would have no record. And so these kids, so we'd have a chance to teach them and inspire them. And then 2 officers, they want to come to our meetings every week. So anyway, pray that grant will go through because it would be life-changing for so many people. So that's what's inspiring me right now.
Another great example of collaboration.
Yeah.
I'm going to stand up. That's fine. Good morning. I'm Dan Gerry. I'm the marketing manager for this construction industry. I don't know if you've heard of it, but nonprofit 501c3 organization. We do housing, career development, education for men and police. Prison. I've never been in prison. Chris Wheaton is my friend in previous business. And so he is the one who has inspired me to handle, of course, the person I'm meant to be today. I also love the sales manager, security business, although I was the operating chief. And Chris asked me to be here to represent us, and
Hi, my name is Lisa Mari. I'm with the New Mexico Coalition at Homelessness. I guess something that's inspired me recently is my coworkers. We're a fairly small team of 16 people, all obviously stretched thin as nonprofit employees. And we had a coworker last week who faced a major challenge, and the entire team, without being asked, really stepped up to support him and sacrifice, their free time and put themselves on the line to support him, and I found that really inspiring.
Chad Clark, Coach Financial. I think what's been inspiring to me lately is just seeing just different groups of people looking at today. That's inspiring. All of you in the room that are willing to learn about collaboration. I think that's an organization that inspires me. It's how we do this together.
I'm Dan Gerry, small business owner, also part of Life. Do a lot of outreach with the church there, and really I just came back from Mardi Gras last week with one of my friends that she's the wife of the pastor of the church there. That's just right on the verge of all the craziness happens down in the French Quarter. And she was diagnosed with lupus 2 years ago. And her journey and the way she's overcome this
So hello everyone, my name is Michael Green. I work with CNN Ingenuity. CNN Ingenuity is a nonprofit that was created by the community college to kind of do alternative forms of education, technology, and entrepreneurship, and also professional development. So one of the things that, I guess it constantly inspires me, but what I love about my position is that I'm always out in the community talking to people and going to community events like this, or 1 million cups, or Impacting Coffee, and just hearing the great things that people in this community are really doing to try to help the community. Because you so often, if you just watch the news, you just think, oh my gosh, all people falling apart, there's nothing here, it's a wasteland or something. But then you go out and you actually sit down and you talk to these people who are involved in the community, and you hear what they're doing and how they're really putting in a huge effort in order to improve our situation here. I think that's always inspiring.
Hi, I'm Connie Beacon, president of the Greater Mountain Business Alliance. I saw something about 1 month ago when we just started on campus, now just white paper on the fly, and word there. Since that time we've developed the campus, there is an $8 million amount of funding from the county for homeless housing, and also the Realtors Association, the Ontario Chamber. All these links have brought us together right now. We're very much on the way towards building what we're calling Gables campus. It's going to be on South Second next to the animal shelter, and it'll house about 150 people with job skills, building classrooms, everything to get something back into society. And also, a shout out to Mary Kay Baker. She's an 82-year-old senator from Massachusetts, and House Bill, I want to say Senate Bill 158 passed last week unanimously to bring funding to the cities for drug treatment centers, not for camps. That's been inspiring. Someone even at that age is still doing something.
Homer Gonzalez with Mega Fellowship, Pricing for Criminal Justice Networking Ministry. For inspiration this morning, as I was driving a Planet parking lot, parking space, driving by, seeing Ann's van, wherever there's good networking opportunity, if I get rental meetings, usually Ann is there. If I'm a networker, I don't know if anybody as far as the criminal justice area networking that has a connectedness and energy. It's been a blessing to work with her through the years. And we're working on helping her with family prison event at the penitentiary in Mexico later this month. Just seeing her energy and being able to adapt and handling large groups, bringing order to confusion, trying to bring people to coordinate together, and so quite an inspiration.
Okay, we have 2 more that have arrived. Great. Welcome. We're just getting underway. Just who you are, what organization you're with, and something that inspired you recently.
Great. My name is Robbie Hughes. I'm the Executive Director of RallyABQ. Our organization, or small group, you're looking at the majority of our staff right here. We host international organizations to Albuquerque. They come through State Department exchange programs. So we bring groups into town, and then we match them up with peers and other groups here in town so that they can learn and have exchanges. We also do home hospitalities with those groups and really trying to integrate them in the community. A lot of that, I think the importance for us is that being here in New Mexico, we don't have a lot of access to the international community. There's not a culture of travel like there is maybe on the East Coast or West Coast. And so having those international engagements, I think, is really, really important, especially among our youth. We're doing a lot with, starting to do a lot with UNM kids and really integrating them in our work. In terms of something that's inspirational, we recently hosted a group of 4 women journalists from Pakistan. Pakistan is one of the toughest countries to be a journalist in the world. It's also one of the toughest places to be a woman in the world. And so we had these 4 super inspirational young women. One in particular is from the tribal region up on the Afghan border, and She went on a hunger strike when she was a teenager to make her dad let her finish school. And so she did finish top of her class, went to college, and is now a radio producer for the Tribal News Network along the border. And their goal is to provide access to news and to the population. Hopefully, I just got an email from her last night. We're going to keep in touch and do some stuff together. But I just found her story particularly compelling and really motivated me to keep engaging. So good morning. Good morning.
My name is Jessica Logan and I handle programming, writer and explain what we do, so I won't get too much into that. But one of the side gigs I have with Michael is we do Impact Coffee, and that is definitely a motivator for me to go. It's very monthly, but go hear about all these really cool organizations in the community that are making huge impacts.
Thanks. So, quick question. Is the atmosphere any different?
Oh. I'm old news. I'm Birga, so I work for the Taharis Foundation as Community Engagement Specialist. I think the most inspirational thing over the last week and a half is the Leadership Collab that happened last Thursday and Friday. It was a group of business leaders and business owners that came together to hear teaching and information from some just world-renowned speakers and entrepreneurs, and I don't know, I just was completely blown away by the response that we got. People seemed to be very inspired and engaged, and I thought it was a phenomenal gathering, and that was something that was a highlight for me. And quick point of reference, through that archway is restrooms in there, and please help yourself to breakfast and coffee throughout. All right, Dan, go.
Okay, well, now that we've done that, why don't we go back to the wing so we're all kind of the U shape here, and you can bring in and you feel like outsiders. And maybe you want to turn around because most of the focus now is up here, and how about right here? Just get us in more of a semicircle arrangement.
You're fine.
Maybe Dan, you're fine. Okay. So.
That's Chad's work phone. It's all right.
Say hello. All right, so why is collaboration usually difficult among community groups? We've all experienced the downsides of collaboration. Just at your tables, chat a little bit, and give me a couple of responses around what makes it hard to experience right around here over the last couple of years. What are the barriers? What are the resistances? What kind of gets in the way? Chat with a neighbor, come up with a couple ideas. Just pair it up, whatever works. Yeah, that works. We're all here. Yeah, you're right there.
I would say barriers are that everybody's so busy doing their own work.
Okay.
I just think it's so busy.
That's okay. It's good to be out. It's been a long day, so it's good.
And say the question again. What are we discussing?
I think one of the barriers I've always found is that there's a limited resources, especially in nonprofit, limited resources. Everybody's been struggling for a larger share of a very small pie, and so I've often found there's this competition among groups that. I haven't experienced that so much in New Mexico, but
One of the things I've seen, at least in my organization anyway, is self-absorption. What is all we're doing, and we don't get out and know what others are doing. Be frank. Yeah.
I think I find that, so I coordinate something called the Alberta Strategic Collaborative, which is about 40 stakeholders investing in the system for needs. It's a mandated workshop system by HUD. And I think what I find is that there's limited time to actually follow through with discussions and action plans. And there's a lack of education around structuring collaboration effectively. Systems of communication and decision making and
along in church, some of the like we see nonprofits.
I'm pretty new to that. And you can say something so I don't know. Yes, we're doing some pretty sad crowd things. Like you said there, we go out so involved in their world and their climate, you're making appointments and responsibilities. So we develop partnerships with people. So like our guys, we get 69% of the nation or permitted living 6 days a week, moving, landscaping, floral. I have many, we in turn, look for our enterprises and we advertise for them. We have a silent auction, we had this last week, called Coffee Town. We share together, our sponsors. So that's my goal, is to build partnerships and expand what we're doing and our demand and expand success rate is so high that we're actually, we've got a lot of targets that we're trying to expand our options. So that's why I helped Chris out.
I head up something called the Returning Citizens Collaboration, so kind of equivalent to probably what you're doing with the homelessness network. And I got tired of going to meetings. And so, where everybody has these great lofty ideas and nothing happens. And so what we do at those meetings is we have speakers, so they talk about their agency for 30 minutes, 2 different agencies, and then we have networking, and then we get to share. Because to go to these meetings over and over and over again and not have anything happen, I mean, none of us, we're all too busy. I like Dan, that's why I came today to see about collaboration and see who's here. But all of us are too busy to just go, we're too busy doing our own work. There aren't enough of us out there. I didn't even know about your organization. Half of the thing is getting to know about different people, but then getting to have a face. Of course I know you person, but I didn't know you were working there. So, we do need to get out and we need to network, but then we have to make a meeting because it's just painful. No one's going to go. And today it's raining, so Albuquerque stays home when it rains. But still, even for collaboration, this room should be full. And everybody, not that they want to not collaborate, they're probably just all too busy doing what's required for the day-to-day work.
Okay, so just a couple of thoughts. What's getting in the way? What's won this from this conversation over here? What gets in the way of collaborating?
Yeah. Well, he's taking notes here.
Okay. I'm trying to picture what you just said, I think it's time.
Yeah, we're also busy doing our own things that all the time we don't have the time to get out, even to come to meetings. I'm just saying this room should be full, talking about collaboration, and people aren't here today. Yeah.
And the other things were things, and again, it ties into that, was limited amount of time, limited resources, and absorbing our own.
Sure.
That is.
Okay, over here, what do you think? Some other barriers, maybe discuss.
We also talked about time being an issue, whether it's we can work on this project now, but then we can't work on it until later, and then all of a sudden it just kind of disappears. I mean, so that was one thing we mentioned. Talked about focus. What's that focus?
So the thing that I mentioned was, once we do get started and we start to unwrap who we are, we kind of lose focus. And because of other commitments that we have, and sometimes one group in collaboration is really focused, and the other one not so much, or they're both very focused but going in different directions. And then duplication of services and ego is something that kind of just comes with it naturally. So if we're doing the same thing, but I do it better, and you think you do it better, it's like, well, we're both going to do it separately.
I think just one more is, for me, it's a top-down problem. The state is not communicating with the county, which is not communicating with the cities, which is not communicating with the businesses as nonprofits. I would like to say, we have a new governor, I think she should be cool with bringing all of the
big thought. It's an opportunity, isn't it? Anything to add?
That was really talked about some resources, time, mutual benefit, smart life.
Pretty much, yeah. Try to agree on the shared agenda.
Right. Okay. Well, some studies have shown that for new leadership needed in collaboration, you can't read it, it's collaboration, a different kind of leadership. Leaders who can safeguard the process, facilitate interaction, patiently deal with high levels of frustration. Other Harvard Business Review suggests that future collaborative leadership depends on the ability of leaders to engage and collaborate with business, government, and other sectors. So right to Connie's point there. What do we do? Well, let's talk about effective collaborators. You've been exposed to a number of them. What are some of their traits and beliefs and skills? Take a minute just to share what you know about what works, because you've all been exposed to good collaborators, and we already had a little eulogy to Anne for her collaborative abilities, talking about how she's always there when there's connection. So let's tease this out a little bit, and then we'll move on into looking at collective impact as one of the frameworks that help collaborations.
I think one of the important things is willingness to listen. Too many times we're too excited about the line ours. We don't really listen.
I completely agree. It's just me listening, comprehending. She said, as far as communication, like I said, I'm in business, I'm dealing with a rent-a-car company right now. I've got a call center in the Philippines, which is fine, but they don't communicate. So that person says one thing, the person says, that's not how I like business. I like to be thorough, be on time, manage my time well. If you manage your time well, you can accomplish your goals for the day.
I think follow through. That's my biggest pet peeve of all. That people say they're gonna do something and they don't do it. I tell our staff and our volunteers all the time, don't tell me you're gonna do something, just tell me you're not gonna do it. Because the buck always stops here. So just follow through on what you say you're gonna do. Whatever simple little thing that is. I don't know, that's key to me.
And in sales, I agree with you now. Some people have, I mean, not me, but some people, like, have trouble saying no, or answer the phone, or say that to the thing. That's what yeah, I was completely,
Yeah, people like,
I think one of the things that it's hard to acknowledge in this is knowing, if you're the facilitator, knowing which voices to bring to the table. Studies show that more than 8 people become unproductive. That's not really realistic to implement in most situations. Often you need more voices, but being mindful of and bringing diverse voices, but that have relevant information to share, and capacity to affect change, I think is critical.
Okay,
Spend meetings.
let's gather a couple thoughts. Traits. What do you notice? This is obvious when you're working with somebody. You can sense their traits, their behaviors. What shows up around good collaborators? What do you notice?
Passion.
Passion. Passion attracts. Assuming it's the right kind.
Yeah, you're right.
What else?
Willingness to listen came up.
Woo, okay, ability to really tune in. And what does that say about the collaborator? Their willingness to listen talks about their mindset. What is their mindset?
they're interested.
Why? What's the belief under that? Could it be, I don't have all the answers?
Yeah.
Have you ever met someone with a big ego that knew all the answers? Were they a good collaborator?
No.
Why would they bother? They had all the answers, right? What else do you notice? Humility. Yes, the willingness to be wrong. Ooh, big egos don't like that.
Follow through came up too.
Follow through. Really critical. You can say to somebody, I'm going to do that, and then if you don't. So collaborators are really interested in building trust over time. Why? What does trust have to do with groups getting things done?
We really care about the greater good. We just don't want to see their agenda.
Yeah, it's bigger than us, it's bigger than me. And there's another piece in there about giving before you get. Are you willing to put yourself out there knowing that there's always enough? I mean, it comes from this central notion of who I am and what I'm here to do. Okay, what else?
There's a thing that came up too was knowing the right size for groups of people to bring together. That sometimes bringing in too many people is not effective. It just doesn't work. But more of a focus.
So there has to be a well thought out process and a structure to what's going on. How many of us have been to meetings that we wondered, well, what was that about? Or we had great conversations, but we came back a month later and had the same conversation. I mean, there needs to be this sense of progress. There needs to be a sense of there's a sort of agenda, some outcomes that are expected here, and then we continue to move that along. Success breeds success. So people who are effective collaborators have a track record of little wins that get bigger as time goes on because more people follow it. It's like being on social media. You can have followers because you're a jerk and people are interested in that, or you're an entertainer, or you can have followers because you're somebody that's a powerful individual in your community. So it's all that is in it. Okay. Skills. What skills are there? We talked about listening. Great communication. You got to be articulate. You got to be able to talk about what's the long-term plan here. Organized. How about influence skills to find resources and yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things we're going to talk about today is strategic doing, and I just wanted to review really quickly what the belief system is that underlies it, because in my experience, doing work with pharmaceutical companies and companies and nonprofits around engagement, what makes effective leaders, I would rather have someone who has the people gene, someone who cares about people and has the humility and the ability to listen, and then we can teach them anything. But someone whose ego is big and they don't care about people, they should not be managing other people, right? So there's a set of beliefs that underlie the work. Starts with, we believe we have a responsibility to build a prosperous, sustainable future for ourselves and future generations. Anyone in here who doesn't have that belief? Should be common to all of your work, right? Second, no individual, organization, or place can build the future alone. Agreed? Open, honest, focused, and caring collaboration among diverse participants is the path to accomplishing clear, valuable, shared outcomes. And we believe in doing, not just talking, and in behavior in alignment with our beliefs. Pretty cool. Well, that's the underpinning of the tool I'm going to give you in a couple minutes called strategic doing. And it's particularly addressing difficult problems that take a lot of people with diverse agendas and interests coming together to do stuff. Now let's talk about Stanford. They have a graduate school of business at Stanford that noticed, they looked around about 10 years ago and said, the world is changing. And if we're here to create the next generation of leaders, there's a lot of things going on in the social arena that we're not getting leaders. We're doing a lot of business leader development, but we're not doing much in the social leader realm. And so they began to study what works out there. And they looked at various initiatives that were community-based, that were successful. And they said, what are the common elements in successful interventions that involve a whole community in trying to solve a problem? And they came up with 5 factors. Common agenda. All participants have a shared vision. How do you get a diverse group of people to share a vision? Have you ever tried? Is it an easy process?
No.
Can it be done?
Yeah.
Yes. There are more effective and less effective ways to go about that, but it can be done. And if that's not done, then what happens? Everybody's off in their own direction, right? Your point was well taken, Connie. We've got the state with its agenda, we've got the counties, we've got the mayors, we've got all of these different agencies in silos with their own vision of the future. And what would it take to bring them all together? Well, that's a big undertaking, but you know, about 20 years ago, Australia, with its different states, realized, this is 30 years ago actually, 25, that their economy was not, or what they were doing to produce new qualified employees was not matching up with what's happening in the economy. And they actually got the whole country together to talk about how they could coordinate efforts to build the future that would enable the economy to continue. So it can be done on a large scale. I think in New Mexico, it's a small enough state that that's probably a possibility, but it's going to take somebody like the governor says, I want to do this. All right, so the next is a shared vision for change, including a common understanding of the problem. How easy is it for people to have a common understanding of the problem? Everybody comes at an issue like homelessness with their own piece of the puzzle, right? I see this element, I work with this part. Do I understand what all of the causes are? Do I understand the whole problem? Do I understand its impacts? How do you get a common understanding of the problem with a diverse group of people? Easy? Takes some time, right? It takes what? Data. It takes research. It takes analysis of what's going on, understanding the root causes of things. The next is a joint approach to solving it. Well, how do we get all these different people that are doing their own thing to agree on a joint approach? That easy?
It's kind of like a jury.
Yeah. Okay. It's going to take some time and some process. And then, agreed upon actions. Now, that one sentence up there, common agenda, has a world of work in it. You see that? Number 2, shared measurement. Collecting data and measuring results consistently across all participants. If I were to ask you, and I will later, what each of your measures are for your organization, are they likely to be the same measurements? Could we really attack the problem as a group unless we use shared measurements? So that's an opportunity that needs to be worked through. Once we have shared measurements, it allows participants to hold each other accountable. When we say participants here, these are organizations that are all working under one umbrella. How do we get organizations to be accountable for what they say they're going to do? Well, common measurements help to solve that, right? Rubber meets the road. Not all groups want to play in that arena. They'd rather not. And I have stories to tell, but I won't. Okay. Mutually reinforcing activities. Activities must be differentiated. What's that mean? That means every group gets to do its strength. We're not coming here to just make everybody do something different. We're going to leverage the strengths of the organizations that participate. And still coordinated in a mutually reinforcing plan of action. So what they do has to contribute to what we're doing here and gradually align. And then continuous communication. We've talked about this. Consistent and open communication to build trust, assure mutual objectives, and create common motivation. Makes sense. And then the last one, maybe in some cases really important, which is backbone support. Is there a separate organization with staff and a specific set of skills to serve as a backbone for the initiative and coordinate participating organizations? The whole state getting aligned, what organization would be the backbone for that? Would there be a place for meetings to be held? Would there be trained facilitators to plan and execute the actions and the work of the group over time? Would there be a plan for convening and an understanding of the key stakeholders to have in the room? Is that easy to do? Well, it's been done many times. In our own community, United Way has been a backbone agency for Mission Graduate. Anybody heard that organization? Its goal is to get 60,000 new graduates from high school certificates or advanced degrees by 2020, and they're making progress. Are they going to meet the goal?
Maybe.
Probably not. But without the goal, they wouldn't be anywhere close. Even close. Okay, so goals are supposed to be stretched. Anyway, those are the 5 conditions. So what I want to do is to use a case study. If you go and Google collaborative about anything, there's tons of examples of communities that are struggling with issues. And I just happened to pick Palm Beach County. It has some resources, but it also has a lot of issues with homelessness. And I was curious to see what have they done with their homeless population and what results have they had, and then could we tease out of their story what skills are required to do that. So this is 10 to end, the homeless plan. Back up. There we go. I should practice this part. We got to get out of the presentation. And just click escape. All right, quick break. Sorry.
All right, coffee break.
So that is solid. This is very interesting. There's a school down there called the Dan Gerry School, and everybody said go to the Dan Gerry schools. I went up with the principal and assistant principal, and then after dating them, because I was trying to do a letter, and I said, oh, that is.
Okay.
Just want to come in and say hi.
Okay, thank you for being here.
Oh, already did that. Okay. All right, great. Thanks so much. I appreciate it being here.
And the assistant principal said, oh, we don't let any. Yeah, too bad, because I wanted to learn more about them, but anyway. They said, oh no, we don't allow convicted felons into the schools. And so think of this now. That means none of the parents, grandparents of all those kids were the most troubled community in Mexico, that big, and they aren't allowed in the school. So how are they going to help and support the kids in the school? Because they aren't even allowed in the school.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so,
Just some.
so it's all so interesting.
Let's take a quick look at how they put their mission and vision together. Their mission is to collaborate with community partners to design, execute, and evaluate programs, policies, and practices to prevent and end homelessness in Palm Beach County. So this is a collaboration that supports groups who are already serving the community. Getting everybody on the same page. Their vision, how do you like this? A community where all Palm Beach County residents are housed and have the opportunity to realize their fullest potential. Would you, if you lived in Palm Beach County, want to support something that said a community where all Palm Beach County residents are housed and have the opportunity to realize their fullest potential? What is there about that statement that makes you want to be a part of it?
It's inclusive. Well, and it says, the underlying thing says, no crime. This is your perfect model community because everybody there is happy. It's Palm Beach, and they're living out their fullest potential. So it says, you know, safe, kind, loving, supportive.
And what that is imagery.
Yes.
Vision lives in imagination. And a good vision statement sparks the imagination and causes people to want to be involved. We talked earlier about I have no time. Each of us has time to do what we prioritize as important. If something comes along that's more important than what I'm doing right now, I will probably put some time into that, right? Just like if you all of a sudden get a new girlfriend or boyfriend, you know, you're going to find a time because that's important to you. So the power of vision is what motivates people and gets them engaged. And it may take time, but having a well-crafted mission, clear purpose for us, and then a vision of what we're here to do that causes other people to join is important. So let's talk a little bit more about what went on to get here. They put 7 goals together. And they had an outcome for each goal. How many of you write goals that says exactly what's going to happen in 10 years or 5 years or whatever down the road? That's really important because that's the focuser. Here's their leading the way planning timeline. It's 14 months. What do they do first? They did an assessment. They needed to know what the problem was. Determine what's going on already. What's the as-is situation? And then they came down and looked at what's resources are available, what would they like to have. It took them several months to figure out what they could envision in a future system with performance measures and policies and procedures. And then after that, they started mapping all the populations and getting data about what exists right now. Then they said, where are the gaps? What's needed and what's actually happening? And then they got into a gaps analysis report, and only then did they do a strategic plan. And the strategic plan was a 10-year look. All the work that went into getting that plan together was huge and involved all kinds of agencies. They have 40 agencies involved in this process. What do you think they started with? How many?
One.
Probably a couple, 1 or 2 or 3, said, we got a problem, Houston. And over time, when this thing started to get legs, more came in. So one of the great things about this work is that successful networks get more members, get more engagement. You may not have the resources you need right now, but each of us is connected to networks, and if we do good work, they start to play. So for all that work, what did they get?
A 7-year and a 10-year plan, right?
They got a plan, and then what's their results? Here are all the agencies that are involved. It's huge, it's diverse, it's got everybody you could think of that's involved in the process. They were looking at veterans. And here are their data points. Have you heard of the point-in-time count?
Yes.
Okay, National Alliance for Homelessness runs a point-in-time count of actually physically going in the community and counting who's homeless and what version of homelessness they're experiencing. So in 2018, they had 1,308 homeless individuals. 11% were chronically homeless, which represented a decrease of 35% from their starting point back in 2008. Here's the 2008 to 2018 list. Their actual homeless count dropped by about a third. What's interesting is their veterans that were 9% this year is actually a 73% increase over time. So they were supposed to be solving the veteran problem. It actually got worse. Is that going to happen with an organization? Are all your indicators going to magically go together and be improved? So what that says is they got to focus on something else. The point I wanted to make is for all the work and all the money, and this is a multi-million-dollar thing that they did, they got a 1/3 reduction in homelessness, which is very laudable, and it looks like they did a lot of the right things. What is that also built? It's built a community that's engaged. And when another issue comes up, it's easy to go find those right people and do it. So even though maybe they haven't solved the whole problem, there's pieces of the problem that are getting solved, and there's a community that's engaged now and understands what's happening. They've seen the data, they've had the publicity. All of this has been a campaign that's reached people. Okay. So Chad, I'm coming back to the presentation. Go back here. There we go, I've got it now, thank you. All right. So let's talk about strategic doing. This is a set of tools that is sponsored by Purdue University that looked at the problem of how do we get people in a room to have a civil conversation that leads to some fast action, basically. Why is it important? Obviously, the world is getting more complex. Issues are harder to solve. There's no single cause that can go and address that. A lot of people have to work together. And the other interesting fact is that traditional strategic plans, 70% end up on the shelf. Has that been your experience? A lot of good talk, not too much action. And we continue to be siloed, as we've talked about here. Whether it's your organization or the county or the community or the state, everyone operates in silos. They have their own funding stream. And this is a big resistance to collaborating, right? Because I got my stuff I don't want to share. We're also moving from hierarchical organizations where one or two people or three or teams in charge to a network frame of conversation. I'd appreciate your question. So we just talked about if we can look at opportunities, if we can have a conversation here about what could we do rather than spend all of our time on problem discussion. What happens when we're talking about problems only? The more problems you bring up, the more problems you find. Have you had that kind of downward spiral thing going on with problem discussions? What if we reoriented the conversation and said, what's possible? And that starts with having a vision question or a framing question. For example, for today, we could say, imagine all residents, agencies, and organizations work together to create a thriving one Albuquerque. What would that look like? Pretty generic. Plug in anything. Creating a end to homelessness, creating all students who succeed, creating safe communities, creating livable parks. But the notion is a vision that looks ahead, that engages people. Once we have that, and typically that happens through a core team, there's a group of people that are all concerned about this issue, and they start the process by coming up with a vision statement and getting the right people in the room. And then the next step is to uncover the hidden assets, and we'll do a quick exercise on that in a few minutes. What individual assets do we have as organizations that we're willing to share and start to leverage together? What might that look like? Well, you got Anthony here. He belongs to the faith community. He's in the hospital as an employee, and he's a parent in a local school district. So he's connected, and he's got access to a lot more resources because of his connections than other people do, right? So we'll go through a quick exercise of looking at what are hidden assets. A lot of times we don't realize that it may be physical, skills assets, social assets, or capital assets, and I'll give you what those lists look like. And we'll do a little exercise around what that looks like in your own situation. And then link and leverage your assets to create new opportunities. Once we've identified a whole list of hidden assets, what could we do to creatively put them together and start to move in the direction we want to? So you could have, for example, a burned out Main Street that has a vacant movie theater, and you might have an arts group in town, and you might have a bunch of students that do nothing after school but get into trouble. What would be a creative way to put them together in something going on in the community? Well, you could have the arts group organize presentations on stage and work with the youth to put on drama, to actually fix up Main Street, all kinds of opportunities. So that's linking and leveraging assets from different areas that now can start to solve issues. A great example is the ham dog. Have you heard of the ham dog? There's actually a guy who makes these. He's come up with special buns, and he puts a hamburger and a hot dog on a bun. That's taking two things and putting them together that don't normally happen. If you look at the restaurant scene, what's going on with the culinary scene? Putting things together that haven't been put together before. It's always finding that new thing, right? And so in organization work, we search for creative ways to link and leverage our assets to develop new things.
Was that product patented?
I don't know. You want to have a franchise?
Sounds like a pretty cool idea.
It is. I'm not sure, but you could Google it and probably find out more about it. There's nothing you can't find anymore. It's all on the web, right? Okay, then we have to rank our opportunities. So let's say we have several opportunities of what we could do about homelessness or any other issue. What do you pick? Well, we have a simple tool that says, well, let's map our opportunities. If we do this, how high is the impact going to be, and how difficult is it going to be to accomplish? Where do we want our opportunities to be selected from? Which box? Yeah, high impact and easy. That's the place where we should go do a project. So it's just a simple tool that helps us focus which do we select from many opportunities to go try. And once we do that, we have to convert it into measurable results. What will we see? What will we feel? Whose life will be better and how? SMART goals come into play. We've got to be able to attach specific measurable objectives to whatever we go out to do, because then we can measure how much we do or don't succeed. Then we define a Pathfinder project with guideposts. What's a Pathfinder project? Out of all the things we talked about, this is the one simple thing that we could do using the existing resources. Notice nowhere in here did it say write for a government grant. This is all, what do we have right now? Would you agree there's inefficiencies in how the community works together to support various causes? How much inefficiency? If we could get 10% of that inefficiency, wouldn't we have resources? And where would that come from? Working together. Linking and leveraging. Getting past egos and doing what's right. Because we've got a clear vision. And we got a clear understanding of the problem. So a Pathfinder project involves everyone that's sitting around. If you're on a team, you don't get to talk and then come back in 30 days and see how it went. You have a commitment. And your commitment is 1 to 2 hours over the next 30 days to do something. And even a busy person can come up with 1 or 2 hours over 30 days to do something that advances this project. It may be go talk to somebody, it may be go find out about a resource, it may be make connections with other groups. There's all kinds of opportunities that come out, but no one gets a free ride. This is not a sit and talk process. This is a sit and understand and do. No permission needed. You can't promise somebody's resource without getting permission, obviously. So there's some practicalities here. It should be a short-term, 90 to 180-day project. It needs to create some buzz, help test our assumptions, and has a clear no-go endpoint. Example, we came together 6 months ago with a valid ID project. And over the course of 2 months, we were able to get MVD and corrections to meet together and solve a problem that had been going on for years that was causing terrific pain in the community. What did it take? A group of people getting in the room like this. Some of you may have been there, I don't know what that. And we solved that because.
Well, not yet.
Steps in the right
works,
direction,
though.
yeah.
It's in the works.
It's still in the works.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a possibility, but it had to be solved at that level, right? The
Yeah.
group didn't have the control, but because the pressure was there, we had a state senator and we had other powerful people who could then get those people to sit in a room and talk, began to solve the problem. All right, so all we're doing on guideposts is saying, where do you think we can be in 30, 60, 90 days? So we're setting some expectations that we hope we get there. This is an agile process, which means that we learn and we change and we do. We do stuff, we see how it went with data, and then we adjust, and then we move forward. This is a long and winding road that is based on how the thing evolves. And then we put a short-term action plan together where everyone's taking a small step. We're not moving into it's not hierarchical. Each of us is doing our part to get there. And then we set these 30 meetings up and we review progress and adjustments. So the facilitated element is somebody is there to continue to manage the conversation. There's a set of frames that go with this, so there's worksheets at each table, and we're dealing 5, 10, 12 minutes with each of these questions. So there's not time for a lot of debate. There's not time for a lot of conversation. It's about focused energy that gets us in a couple of hours to a place where we've got a doable project. Make sense? Questions on, this is what it looks like. We come together, we're apart for 30 days, do an individual task for 1 or 2 hours, we come back together, see where we're at, change our approach where needed, have another time for doing work, and then getting there. So this is kind of a do, think process. Cool? It gets it done. And if you go to strategic doing on the web, you'll see examples of communities that have made great progress quickly moving in. If we go back to the timeline of Palm Beach County, 14 months, 5 months to get to a place where they could do a strategic plan. Do you think anybody was getting frustrated in that process?
Sure.
Was there work that could have been done over those 5 to 7 months before they actually had a plan? Would it help to illuminate the plan if we had work and experience and data to bring right into it? So those are some of the reasons how this can fit together. I believe there's a lot of complementarity between the notion of back here. Like an impact, remember, these 5 are conditions. What conditions need to exist? It doesn't say how. Strategic doing answers the how. Through facilitated conversation, very targeted toward a result, do you get action? And then when you've done enough of those Pathfinder projects, you have community impact. And every group needs to do what it likes to do. It gets engaged at the level that brings its own capacity to the fore. Questions? Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment on the goals you had talked about. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Daniel, sorry.
Can't say me, but what has helped me be successful, like you had said, you help people on interviews, job interviews or something. See, one question I don't like was somebody asked me in an interview, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? You know, if I'm going to be the city hosting the Olympics in 2025, then you can make a 10-year goal.
Yes.
I usually make a daily goal, a weekly goal, a 30-day goal, and in the last 4 months, I've accomplished every one of them, and that's why I'm at my point today.
I love it. The days of a stable economy and business climate and everything else, social climate, are gone. Who can predict what's even going to look like in technology next year, much less 5 or 10 years? So your point is perfectly well taken. And there's a perfect spiritual principle in here too, which is be in the moment. Change happens not in the future, not in the past, it happens right now. What am I doing right now that's going to move me forward? And that's what you're talking about. I got a goal for today, I got a goal for the week, I got a goal for the month, and if I meet those, it's just keeping my mind focused on some short-term activities. And with a problem as big as homelessness, there needs to be some big strategy, and there's probably a likelihood it will take 8, 10, 12, even after 12 years in Palm Beach County, they've only reduced it by 1/3. So what does that say? This is an ongoing, it's called a wicked problem because it can't be solved. It can be moderated, it can be mitigated, it can be improved, but it's not going to go away. Would you agree that's true for our homeless situation?
We had a meeting at the Harvest Church about 2 months ago when the government shutdown was going on. I'm trying to remember the figures, but I think they said 19% of, was it Albuquerque or New Mexico is homeless.
Okay.
So how do they go about, they just actually have people walking around like they do the census? Is that how they?
Well, on the national website, it says Albuquerque or the state of New Mexico has about a 7% homeless rate.
Okay, then
I don't know where that point of count comes in, but go ahead.
So I am basically responsible for the point in time
Uh-huh.
count for Albuquerque since 2015,
Mhm.
and my staff and the people that I work with. And the data, at least in Albuquerque, is extremely limited. We can't actually find everyone who's homeless on a given night. It's only capturing one night. And from 2015 to 2019, our data shows an atrocious growth in homelessness. But the reason is because when we have developed such better methods for actually locating people and utilizing the right skill sets and timeframes to collect data that we've doubled and tripled the number of people we found. Not because there are that many more people, and since we're talking about this, I felt like I should say
No, it's
something.
really helpful.
So you don't go look at our website and freak out. I mean, there is, I would say anecdotally looking around, I would agree there is more homelessness now than there was 5 years ago, definitely. But when you look at the data for the point in time for Albuquerque, the fact that we focused on having street outreach doing surveying in the streets, that we quadrupled the number of people doing it, and that we moved from trying to force people awake in the middle of the night to finding them during the day over multiple days has changed our data. I think a lot of communities have more stable methodology. We hope to continue to have this stable methodology, but it's really difficult. We also manage the coordinated entry system where everyone who takes the housing survey, that is probably more accurate data for New Mexico. And I would say that 7% is more accurate than 19 probably. And we currently have 4,000 households actively looking for housing right now.
Yeah. Plus you can go to the shelters, right, and count it.
We do.
All right, I'd like to take just a minute at your tables to wrap up. We've got about 8 minutes in the session today. So, in light of what we've covered, in front of you on the table are a set of questions. This becomes a framework that you can use with a potential collaborative group. What you're going to do is you're going to share what you do and what you've, how you measure your results.
Yes.
Yeah, here. And then, that's all right, no problem.
We got more.
Yeah, we got more for you.
Here we go.
It's two-sided.